Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to look into the case of Elizabeth Báthory, an Hungarian countess, also known as the infamous Lady and the Blood Countess. She is in the World Guinness Records as the most prolific and worst female serial murderer, who allegedly killed more than 600 virgins. But is this all true? And what made her do this? Was it a conspiracy from the rich to become richer? But first, let's start from the beginning. Well, today I'm going after Hungarian. So, Elizabeth Báthory, westernized for Erzsébet Báthory. She was born on August 7th, 1560 in Nyírbátor, Royal Hungary. Her family was one of the most powerful Protestant families in Hungary at the time. Her father was Baron George Báthory of the exaggerated branch. Her mother was Baroness Anna Báthory of the Szomlő branch. So, you heard it. Her parents came from two separate branches of the Báthory clan. They belong to the same clan, and I'm going to modernize this. They belong to the same family, period. Probably distant cousins. Let's continue. Elizabeth had two brothers, István and Gábor, and two sisters, Clara and Zsófia. Elizabeth spent her childhood at the exaggerated castle, the family estate, in Nyírbátor. When I say the family was powerful, I mean really powerful. The family Báthory actually owned the town of Nyírbátor from late 1200s until 1613. That's 400 years. Elizabeth was raised a Calvinist Protestant. She learned Latin, German, Hungarian, Greek, and Slovak, the language of her servants. She was trained in mathematics, logic. She was a woman who indeed had a remarkable education. Elizabeth suffered multiple seizures, possibly epilepsy, as a child. She had fits of rage. She had eye and head pain. She possibly had migraines, and this was according to her letters. Her health issues possibly were caused because of the inbreeding of her parents. And here's the thing, inbreeding didn't happen just with her parents. It happened in the family, period. They were boinking and having children within the family. I'm going to rephrase that, within the clan. Her family had also mental health related issues. For example, temper tantrums, the occasional sword play in the house, allegiance to a chair, and these insanities were what they call the typical behavior of aristocrats. So let me translate this one for you. Too much privilege makes you do weird stuff. Elizabeth liked fencing and horsemanship. She was described as a tomboy. She liked dressing up like a boy, studying like a boy, and she demanded to be treated like her male relatives and staff. Elizabeth, or Erzsébet Báthory, was born into a privileged family of nobility, and she had access to wealth, education, and social status. As a young girl, Elizabeth witnessed brutal punishments given by the family's officers at the estate. Her brother Gábor is said to have been extremely cruel. Elizabeth was taught sadomasochism from her aunt, and one of her uncles taught her Satanism and witchcraft. She had a creative family, let's just say it. Elizabeth got engaged at the age of 10, and this was typical for young girls of nobility at the time. She got engaged to Count Ferenc Nadasdy of the Nadasdy family, one of the most influential and wealthiest families in Hungary. And it is believed that the engagement was actually a political arrangement, and I'm not surprised. Are you? Before she married, she left her family's estate and she was entrusted to her mother-in-law and settled in Szarvas, the main residence of the Nadasdy family. Elizabeth and Ferenc married when she was 15 and he was 19 on May 8, 1575 at the palace of Vranov na Toplon. And because Elizabeth had a higher social status, she refused to change her last name, and he took hers. Elizabeth and her husband had a reputation of being harsh masters, and it is believed Count Ferenc was cruel like Elizabeth, and he actually taught her some things. It was literally torture to serve the couple. Elizabeth and Ferenc had 3 daughters and 2 sons, and there were also rumors they had another son, who could have been just a cousin. Their children were named Anna, Orslia, Catalina, Andras, who died young, and Pal. Miklos, who was rumored to be their child, could have been just a cousin, and officially he wasn't their child. All of the children were raised by governesses. There were also some allegations Elizabeth at the age of 13 had a baby. The father was a peasant, and the baby was given away to a local woman the Báthory family trusted. It was a baby girl, and these allegations are just rumors. There's no proof. In 1578, Ferenc became the chief commander of the Hungarian troops and went to war against the Ottomans, who were threatening Central Europe. While her husband was away, Elizabeth took care of business and the estates they owned, which were a lot. She was responsible for the Hungarian and Slovak people. She also provided medical care, and it's also said during war, Elizabeth intervened on behalf of destitute women. It's also said that while her husband was out, Elizabeth entertained herself with sex toys. She bleached her hair Venetian style. She started experimenting with herbal brews, potions, powders, and drugs. Elizabeth was living la vida loca. Her husband's reputation protected her from her naughty behavior, which became more deviant and deadly cruel. Before 1605, Elizabeth surrounded herself with an intimate squad which included Anna Darvoya, 3 old women, and a disfigured boy. They were chief torturers and executioners. Between 1602 and 1604, rumors of Elizabeth's cruelty started to spread throughout the kingdom. Servants were severely punished and beaten. They were whipped until they bled. Elizabeth used branding irons, razors, pincers, and torches on them. Once she sewed the mouth of a girl who was chatting too much. She burned their bodies with heated coins if they were suspected of stealing money. She also would have their naked bodies be covered with honey, tied to a tree, and have fire ants have their way. Even though some of the details might have been exaggerated, Elizabeth Báthory was torturing and killing servant girls. Rumors were everywhere, but the victims were poor, so it would take a while and the death of a noble girl for something to be done by the authorities. In 1601, Ferenc developed an illness still unknown till this day, which caused debilitating pain in his legs. In 1603, he became disabled. In January 1604, at the age of 48, Ferenc Nadasdy died. And before he died, he entrusted his heirs and widow to György Thurzó. After Ferenc died, Elizabeth's funds started to dry up really quickly, and she made frequent trips to the royal treasury demanding the king to repay the enormous debts owed to her dead husband. And this information is really important. I want you to keep this in mind. The king owed the family. She no longer had Ferenc's supply of plundered goods or ransom fees, so she became desperate and began selling off items in an attempt to raise cash. But remember this, she still owed a lot of estate, a lot of land. She was still very powerful. And we all know till this day, men don't like powerful women. With Ferenc's death, Elizabeth's evil acts were unleashed, and she was unapologetic. Elizabeth was running out of young servants to torture and kill, so she turned to noble girls, and the death of one of them would prompt an investigation. In 1610, King Matthias sent Gheorghe Turzus to investigate the claims about Elizabeth's cruel activities. During the raid, allegedly, officials searched the castle and discovered the dead bodies of young girls. Some were missing arms and eyes, and one body was still in the fireplace. These officials, led by Gheorghe Turzu, collected statements from alleged witnesses. After the investigation, the statements of the alleged witnesses and what the officials and Gheorghe Turzu allegedly saw at Elizabeth's house, the Countess was arrested on December 30th, 1610. She was escorted up the hill, accompanied by a crowd and armed men, and her squad was taken in chains. The trial started on January 1611. Her squad was questioned, and when I say questioned, I mean they were tortured. They stated Anna Darvoya taught them how to torture and kill. They also stated Elizabeth Báthory took a whip, dagger, fire iron, needle, or other items to attack the servants. One member of the squad stated Elizabeth bit out pieces of flesh from the girls. She attacked them with knives. She would torture them in several ways. She would stick needles underneath their fingernails, and if they tried to take it out, she would cut their fingers. The victims were girls ages between 10 and 14. First, she killed daughters of lesser gentry. These girls were sent to her gymnasium by their parents to learn court etiquette. Elizabeth ran out of servants and started to take in aristocratic girls to teach them the ways of social graces. One of the noble girls died, and Elizabeth tried to stage it as a suicide. And that's when the authorities finally did something. Even though Elizabeth and the squad were tried separately, all of the accused were found guilty. Anna Darvoya became blind and died before the trial, and the two other females had their fingers torn from their hands by red-hot pincers. Then they were burned at stakes as witches. Instead of the death penalty, Elizabeth received a life sentence, and this deal was done between her cousin Gheorghe Turzu and the king, and she was imprisoned in a room in her castle until she died. And what was her motive? After a girl brushed Elizabeth's hair too hard, the countess struck the girl, and the girl bled, and some of the blood was left on Elizabeth's hand. Later on, Elizabeth noticed her hand looked a little bit more youthful, so she began with the idea she could restore her youth by bathing and drinking the blood of virgin girls. Another motive, Elizabeth was just cruel, and she needed young girls to act on her cruelty. On the evening of August 20th, 1614, Elizabeth complained to her bodyguard that her hands were cold. She went to sleep, and she was found dead the next morning. The location of her body is unknown. It is claimed the number of victims of Elizabeth Báthory and her squad was over 600 girls. Many believe the accusations made against Elizabeth Báthory were made up. Elizabeth was a powerful woman with tremendous wealth and estate, and some believed Elizabeth had committed treason because she was involved and supported her second cousin, and this would have resulted in her properties being confiscated by the king. So Gheorghe Turzu and her son Gabor made up a deal so they could keep her rich inheritance between the two of them. It was also mentioned a large debt owed by King Matthias to Báthory was cancelled by her family in exchange for them to manage her captivity. Remember when I said he owed her money when she kept going to the royal treasury asking him to pay his debts? So many believe the rumors and allegations were actually political motivated slander which would allow her relatives to appropriate her lands. Some authors believe Gheorghe Turzu exaggerated his evidence to disgrace Elizabeth, which would benefit his political state ambitions, and most of the witness testimonies were hearsay. The squad confessed under torture and then executed quickly, and all of the accusations of murder were based on rumors. It is believed Gheorghe's claims he discovered Elizabeth covered in blood had been exaggerated. So there's a slight possibility that all the story about Countess Elizabeth Báthory might have been just a myth made up by men who wanted to take over her possessions. But here's the thing, you can't deny the woman was cruel. So this is the story of Elizabeth Báthory, Countess Dracula, and there seems to be acknowledged Elizabeth was indeed a cruel woman to her servants, but the other allegations seem a little bit far-fetched. And to end this, don't forget to subscribe, click the notification bell button. Thank you for watching, stay away from vampires, and stay safe.